I mean, like I want you to know that I'm a good gamer. I guess that's really important to me as an almost 50-year-old extremely uncool historian. Just know that I'm a pretty good gamer.
We were
I'm
talking
not
about
going to
your
help this.
we were talking about your family and how your family is very excited that you're doing this, but not that
This
you're
is the
doing
first thing I've
this.
ever done that my 12-year-old um, daughter is really thinks might be cool.
Hello, everyone. Troy here, your friendly neighborhood community manager for all things Crusader Kings related, with a very special stream. As you'll notice, I have game director Alexander Oltner here with me, as always, the most eminent knowledge of the CK3 brand to date. And we have special guests today. We have the authors of the book The Bright Ages. If you want to show everyone the book, please, sir.
Absolutely.
Boom, 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 boom. So, we have David, who will be driving today, playing the game and discussing with us. As well as
David Perry.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm a medieval historian. I work at the University of Minnesota, and I'm one of the authors of this book.
Excellent. And his co-author, Matthew, here with us as well.
Yeah, hi. I'm a professor here at Virginia Tech, and I'm really excited about this. I will just be critiquing every decision that David makes while he's playing the game.
You know, I couldn't ask for anything better. Really, I'm really excited. If you guys haven't already picked up The Bright Ages, it is as we say in the title. You want to hold it up for us again?
Absolutely.
It is a new history of medieval Europe. As you can see, they have a copy on their shelves as well. If you haven't picked it up already, we definitely suggest it. It is out now by Harper Collins, and they are definitely, trying to sell books because it's their livelihood, but also, a passionate project for them. So we got a chance to read it, and now we're going to sit and discuss with them. Without much further ado, we're going to start the game. So why don't you guys tell us a little bit about where you started and why?
All right, so I'm going to play 11th century France and Philip I. And I'm really going to play Philip I for a couple reasons. First of all, we're very excited about the Royal Court release, and we wanted to jump in right away with the Royal Court. Second of all, Philip is a really interesting historical character that Matt's going to talk about more. And third of all, I really am excited to try to break France into tiny little pieces. But accidentally, like I'm going to try to play Philip and dominate France. That's my whole goal, is the story of the kings of France conquering France. But there's a good chance it'll fail, and I'm really excited to watch it fail if that happens. So I'm kind of two minds about it, and I'm ready to go. But Matt, shall I go ahead and start the game, and then Matt, you can talk a little about it while I get oriented. All right,
Let's go
so
ahead
we're
and
playing King Philip of France. He's 14, and let's get going while Matt can take us a little more into it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, David, you say you're going to try to break France, but I don't know that 11th century France could be broken any more than it actually was in the past. I mean, Philip I, ruled, France in theory as a 14-year-old in 1066, but really the powerful magnates, the dukes and the counts, were the people that held all the power at that time, especially because he was a minor. His regent, the person in charge, was the Count of Flanders, and was an immensely powerful person in his own right. His mother was from Kiev and Rus. Perhaps you've heard of Kiev. It's been in the news lately.
Yeah.
So there's a lot going on. You have William, the Duke of Normandy, who's about to invade England any day now. At the same time, Henry IV is in charge of the empire. Lots of problems. So as you said, good chance you're going to fail. But I wish you all the best of luck.
Drop it.
So I'm just gonna get a little bit oriented because every game starts differently. Who my advisors are. I am not going to grant vassals to a rightful liege. They'll see if they get mad about it. I am going to try to keep an eye on this situation. We don't want to lose Flanders to the German Empire, but we'll see how that goes. There's definitely, I kept my playthroughs ahead of time to a minimum, so things will be a surprise. But there was one time when the Duke of Flanders allied with Norman Italy and totally destroyed the Capetian dynasty, 5 years into the game.
That's how it should
so we're
be.
going to try to avoid. We're going to try to avoid that today.
That's how it should be.
But it's totally reasonable. All right, so let's go ahead and turn that clock on.
I'm just waiting for you to drop it and shatter it like a stained glass window and just create terrifying border gore that's going to give me PTSD for months to come.
That's right. All right. So, I appointed my Archbishop court physician because I almost always do that in hopes that I don't die right away and that we can get endorsed. In every one of the things about games, right, is that they work in kind of these system ways, and I'm going to try today to not kind of maximize my efficiency and instead play around with it. But I want everyone watching the stream to know that I could I mean, like, I want you to know that I'm a good gamer. I guess that's really important to me as an almost 50-year-old, extremely uncool historian. Just know that I'm a pretty good gamer.
We were
I'm
talking
not
about
gonna
your
help this.
we were talking about your family and how your family is very excited that you're doing this, but not that you're
This is the
doing
first thing
this.
I've ever done that my 12-year-old daughter thinks might be cool. I was really excited with the royal court to see the addition of holy relics
Did you hear
in
that?
court on display. So that was
Did you hear
a big thing for me.
They're excited about holy relics.
Yeah, there was a whole thing in the book about
Yeah.
that as well, right? With
Yeah.
Crown of Thorns moving from Byzantium to France.
Yeah. So we have a holy thorn here, right? I don't know. There were relics of the True Cross in 11th century Europe, but that's something that gets really intensified in the 13th century. And in fact, my entire first book was about nothing but relics getting out of Constantinople and moving to Western Europe. But I'm happy to see this. And then we have the
Shaving
skull
off,
cap of Charlemagne too. So
Yeah, shaving off little pieces of the cross. And,
Splinters and chunks. Yeah. Oh man, could you imagine one of those historians that's like, yeah, I found this old piece of wood. Maybe it's from a cross. God, I hope so. Can I?
What do you think,
validate
Matt?
that? No.
what is the Capetian dynasty known
That's
for?
a really interesting point that Troy was making, is that,
Yeah.
that even in the Middle Ages, like, there were hucksters, right? There were fraudsters who were selling fake relics. And so there was absolutely kind of a culture of skepticism about a lot of things. And so provenance, like how a relic moved from where it was supposed to have been, like in this case for the cross, like Jerusalem to, Paris, like that would have really mattered to people. And they weren't just kind of like, generally accepting of anything that kind of crossed their path. So there's a good chance Philip would have had some relics, though.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, but like, how do you disprove that? Like you see this guy that's clearly the king of France, and he goes, "Look, I have a piece of the original cross, that, from the incident," and everyone goes, "Oh, that's amazing, that's wonderful." And then some other guy walks in with an exactly identical piece and goes, "Look, I also have that piece." Like, are you gonna ye old fisticuffs to figure out whose chunk of the cross is real?
This event here is interesting because one.
Yeah,
one of
that's
the,
why I paused here. I wanted to talk about this one, so I was going to wait till we could talk about relics for hours, and I hope we come back to it. But I'm so glad this event popped up. I'm not going to take on 240 stress at age 14. That just
What's
seems
the
like
worst that could happen?
Why not? I mean, we've already got puberty going on. Why not add this on top of it?
I mean, I would take on 80 stress, maybe even 120. I'm just not taking on 240 stress out of 300. Right?
Check
So,
your traits. Are you
sorry.
paranoid by any chance?
Yeah.
I am
Yes!
paranoid.
Yeah, there it is.
Paranoid and rowdy. It's going to be an exciting game.
Oh man.
But I just can't. I can't take on that much stress at age 14. But maybe, Matt, you can talk a little bit about Kiev and what's going on here, and Mama.
Sorry, I kind of lost the thread. So talk about Kiev. Yeah. So
Yeah.
all right. So I mean, I could talk about Philip the First for like hours and hours. So
You have
this is
three.
really interesting.
You have exactly
I
three.
have three. Perfect. I'll cut it short then. So when we get to the third hour. So Philip is the product of the King of France, his father Henry, and Anne of Kiev, who was from the Kievan Rus. And there's a huge debate about why Philip is named Philip, because that's not a royal name, and that's really interesting because in royal dynasties, right, is that you take specific names and then you name them. Oftentimes in France, at least, with predecessors, you would take the grandfather's name and give it to your son or something like that, right? And this happens kind of all the time. And Philip is a weird name, and then people are named after him in the royal line, like Philip II, Philip Augustus. Later on, and then so on and stuff like that. But Philip seems to have been an Eastern name, and so why Henry chose Anne of Kiev as his bride, like there's a really kind of robust debate about that. But it really is clear that she came from somewhere else. She's from an Eastern Orthodox tradition rather than kind of Latin Christian at the time, and this was a big deal that he decided to do this. Probably had a lot to do with the fact that the Capetians at the time, the rulers of France, like they weren't taken seriously as rulers, because the dukes and the counts were where the real power lay. And Henry, his Philip's father, needed something to kind of bolster his credibility, so he looked for a princess where he could find one, and the only one available was in kind of the hinterlands of Kiev and Rus at the time.
That's very
Speaking of
interesting.
narrators,
Yeah, that was solid. Like that's a lot to unpack. As a side note, we literally posted this stream in our chats for our teams, and the very first response from one of our dev team members was like, "Oh my god, that book! I love that book. It's one of my favorites."
Fantastic.
So you guys have fans on the
Fantastic.
team here. But also, while we're on the subject of social media and all that stuff, hopefully one of my fantastic community ambassadors is listening. You guys are available on Twitter to be followed. I'm hoping one of my CAs will drop it in chat. Get your tags on there to make sure that everyone that is watching can follow you. We also have our Discord, discord.gg/CK3, for conversations, questions, etc. But definitely those out in the community that are interested, follow these guys on Twitter. They are chock full of knowledge, as you've already seen, and we will continue to see for the rest of our time. But I just wanted to get my little social, spiel. That was very self-serving of me. I apologize. In there.
Just trying to decide. I think.
Decisions, right?
Yeah, well, I'm
yeah.
just trying. I'm just
Yep.
thinking about. I mean, again, so one of the things I really love about Crusader Kings 3 is that almost everything that happens, right, there's kind of a history behind it. And then you can decide as a player, am I going to follow through the history or not? I mean, there were a lot of women who were doing preaching-like things throughout the history of European Christianities, but there are also a lot of people who thought it was a bad idea. I think we're going to spread the word of God. I think that's what we're going to do. Because
Probably a good call.
really, though, the reason we're going to do it is because I want to keep as many of my higher nobles happy with me as possible until I can have a situation where if people rebel, I don't lose my throne.
You don't get beheaded immediately.
I don't get beheaded immediately. I mean,
Yeah.
there's just a real chance that I could end up playing a duke or a count very quickly
Yeah.
if things go wrong.
Well, don't count on it.
And yeah, I think we're gonna stick with Duke Thibaut though here.
appreciated that, Troy. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome. now we're gonna have to duke it out.
Oh,
All right.
Sorry, it's a rough night for jokes.
Yeah.
oh,
What a royal mess this is becoming.
I won't lord it over
We're
you though.
going-
no,
You
please
guys.
stop. This is not what I signed up for.
Just get up
I'm
and
trying to
take your
play
hands
here.
off and leave.
I'll have to marshal all my energy to resist your
No.
puns.
We're gonna do that.
Oh.
See what I'm put
man.
up with in writing this book? I just want to say that the one pun per chapter was not in the first draft.
Yeah. You never stood a chancellor.
Yeah, I kind of insisted on that. I got one pop culture pun reference per chapter. That's what I was allowed.
Very nice.
That was my
Very
allocation.
nice.
That was nice, by the way. One of your vassals came and actually gave you a gift. As an
And
homage
he
gift.
did. That was really good. All right, I'm going to pause for just 1 second while I think about marriage. So here's a place, right, where I could marry into the Normans. And that would be a really smart move because we know that the Normans are busy conquering England. But Philip would never have married into the Normans.
No.
And we could marry Princess Theodora, and that would be a really smart move game-wise. But the Byzantines would never have married Philip. He was too petty for that. So we're going to look a little more local. We've got Duchy of Bohemia is pretty good. Duchy of Bavaria is pretty good. But also we need someone a little older so we can have an heir sooner. We're not going to Wales. No one wants to marry a Welsh person. No offense to the Welsh. I love the
Wow.
Welsh. I just mean from the perspective of Philip.
Wow.
My family as well.
Wow.
I'm offended right
Wow,
now.
there goes our sales in,
Oh.
in that part of the UK. Jeez.
So what I'm going to do is I'm monitoring the English invasion, and I'm trying to. I want to conquer Brittany. Like that's going to be my first goal, is to try to get Brittany back in the kingdom of. Well, back. It was never really get Brittany in the kingdom of France. That's my next goal. So while you guys chat,
Well,
I'm going to try to
no,
conquer Brittany.
By the way, something that a situation France is in from the start of the game is that there's still a kingdom of Aquitaine, right? And it was never a certainty for it to be absorbed into France. So maybe you should, I don't know, speed it along a little bit with your council. The absorption of Aquitaine.
Just be like, this is ours now.
If we have 3 hours, maybe we should try
All
and
right,
avoid the chance of Aquitaine splitting off.
Yeah, keep that tapestry of stained glass together.
That's right.
Let me see. When
It's
is
the
possible?
Chancellor, I think.
Possible CK3 stream on Xbox
you want
chat?
to do that? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, for the question in chat about CK stream on Xbox, we actually had one on Wednesday. We'll have another one on Wednesday next week, so feel free to tune in for those. It is actually really rad. We had this week David and Elizabeth. Next week we will have Fabian and Elizabeth back. So if you're familiar with our stream team, it's the same crew, but on Xbox this week.
Yeah.
So what are we're trying to we're trying to integrate title? Is that what we're working on here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's the 2 duchies at the top there you can start working on to make them crown lands.
Yep.
Poitiers or Bourbon. Excuse my French, I do not know how to pronounce.
Yeah.
Pardon my French.
Yeah, pardon my French.
Pardon my French.
All right. Let's try to get Bourbon. Only 67 years.
Languedoc.
Yeah.
Better start go, yeah. I mean, one of the really interesting things that happens about 100 years from where we are now is the French royal commitment to conquering France, southern France. And, you know, it didn't have to go that way. They use a lot of different tools to do it. So I'm doing that.
During Philip's reign, like the Dukes of Aquitaine were actually some of his biggest supporters.
Yeah.
Philip relied upon him, especially as a counterweight to like William in Normandy, and then William's successors, his sons, later on as well. So really had to keep William of Aquitaine really happy throughout. Otherwise, things would have gone very badly for him. So
what you're saying?
And that's one of the things, like, historically, that I love about Philip is, like, he was really good at playing people off against each other and never being directly involved in things. So
seems like you should have an intrigue education almost.
he should have an intrigue education. That would be great.
But he seems to develop it over his life. I mean, he really starts he's a kid, he's focused very locally. He builds these skills over time. You know, I think if you look at Philip I in 1066, you're not expecting him to become the guy he becomes. And even 20 years later, in his mid-30s, he's still just kind of... And I'm trying to play a little bit that way. I'm building an economy. You know, I'm trying to build an economy in my lands. Eventually, I'll start having kids. I could start looking for a girlfriend. I'm not quite there yet, but, you know, I'm taking a peek at my
Did you do
siege weapons
already?
Sorry, what?
Did I miss
I got
that?
betrothed.
Okay.
Yeah, I got betrothed to... I've already forgotten who I'm marrying. I know. Bad. Yes. A nice German noblewoman from up here.
Air 79, if you have an issue with a spelling or anything you feel is wrong, definitely head over to our forums and report that. We read through the forums every week and make sure we pass all the information to the development team sitting right next to me. We review that a lot. We are always on the forums and our Discord, so we are monitoring conversations like that. And if you feel something is misspelled, please report it to us. Let us know what you think it should be and where those sources are from. We'll be happy to help you out.
Big event. We did have the Norman Conquest. It did happen this game. It usually, in my experience, happens if I'm not playing one of the participants.
Yep.
Of
course.
So here we are. We have the Norman Conquest. This is a real problem, right? The minute someone allies, it's not just that William might take over France, but the minute someone allies with him, I'm going to lose that war. And there are ways around it. I could ally with the Holy Roman Empire, I could ally with Byzantium, but Philip doesn't want to do that. And they don't necessarily want to do that with Philip either. So we're just going to have this guy here causing trouble, which is why I appointed this kind of crappy marshal of William of Aquitaine to my council, because I don't want him pissed off at me. But I also don't want to give him any of his vassals back, because that seems hard.
Yeah. And in chat, we don't know about other games. If you hit up the social teams for those games, they'll be able to help you. I have no information about other games. But I want to ask you, gentlemen, because I know it's contentious, and we've discussed it before on streams. It's not actually the Byzantine Empire right now, is it? There's
the Roman Empire.
There it is. Yeah. There's a conflict in naming there, which you go into in some book that I've read recently. But
I was gonna say I could recommend a book that actually discusses that directly. It's called The Bright Ages.
Yeah.
No, the term Byzantine is actually it's a 19th century invention. A way of distinguishing, and in fact, probably actually marginalizing the accomplishments of the eastern part of the Roman Empire and its successor as a way of kind of putting into the idea of scholarship that the Roman Empire did fall because the Byzantine Empire was something quote unquote different than what had come before. This would have been news to the people who were living in Constantinople for the 1,000 years after Rome fell. It would have been news to the people who were living in most of Latin Europe, for the 1,000 years after quote unquote Rome fell. So it was just the Eastern Roman Empire. These people were Roman emperors who ruled. They're kind of marginalized as by the by the Holy Roman Empire, by Charlemagne, by the Carolingians, as kind of Greek emperors when they want to kind of put them down. But there's a recognition that they're legitimate Roman emperors, even as they're trying to kind of denigrate their accomplishments in the West.
Could you imagine walking into Constantinople and being like, "Ah, yes, this is the center of the Byzantine Empire," and watching like 500 people just stare at you like you've got 3 heads?
What does that mean?
Yeah.
But we talk about this in our book too, and we use Byzantine because because words change in meanings, and sometimes you just have to kind of follow along with it.
Right.
And we want to, just like you, I'm sure you had this conversation too. Like we want to be clear who we're talking about and when. And so it's not like using Byzantine is wrong as a historian. It's just that you want to be really clear about what you're doing and why.
Zeitgeist,
there are some words.
Zeitgeist vernacular. Yeah.
Well,
There's I wrote a whole article about why the word crusade is inaccurate and why we should get rid of it, because it's an anachronistic term, right? That was kind of coined in the modern world. But like, I still teach a course called the Crusades, right? Like that's what people understand.
It's a tactic that we tend to use as well when making the game. That we use something familiar and then we drag you in and then we show you what it's actually like.
I'm an incredible fan of baiting and switching when I teach. So I think this is exactly the same thing, right?
And the nicer way of putting that is you need to meet people where they are, and then you can move them to where you'd like them to be.
Yeah.
Oh, but I'm nothing but a con man, David. So I prefer to switch.
I know. I'm busy trying to conquer part of Brittany. Sorry to all the Bretons out there, but having offended the Welsh, now I'm going to offend the Bretons.
We've got 2.5 more hours. See how many people we can offend, I guess. Like
only in kind of fringe expanded Celtic universe. Right.
Perfect.
As an Irishman, Irish American, an Irish American Jew from Tennessee. So now you know my whole background and why my therapist is very busy. I definitely engaged in offending the edge of the Celtic world.
So the question from chat is, what did Byzantines call themselves, and what did Western Europe call them? That was just Romans, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, the Byzantines themselves, they call themselves Roman. I'm not going to try to pronounce the Greek term that they use. The language they spoke was a form of Greek, which the Roman Empire, even before kind of the fall or the supposed fall in the 5th century, was the predominant language at the time, because that was the language of culture, of civilization, ever since really the 4th century, since a little after Constantine, in the very early part of the 4th century. So they would have absolutely called themselves Romans. And in fact, you see in Byzantine, I just used the term, in sources that were produced in the empire when they encountered the Westerns, even after the kind of resurrection of the empire in the 9th or the 12th century, they call them Franks, right? That the Byzantines themselves are very clear that they're the Romans. The other people are not the Romans. They're still the barbarians. Yeah. The barbarian kingdoms who have they occupy the land, but they're not the real successors to Rome, the way that people in Constantinople or in Asia Minor, modern Turkey, really are.
Yep.
I have not checked my innovations.
You should do that.
Yeah. No, I already have a memorialism. This is good.
You seem like a player that likes to increase your economy. Just a hunch.
I mean, I definitely am. I definitely am an early economy, so that everything else becomes easier later. I mean, unless I'm playing like the Vikings, in which case it's build a massive. All right, now I've got in trouble. I've got a Liberty faction with Robert. I could just imprison Robert, though.
And so I know there's a lot
Always,
of things you want to talk about, a lot of things you want to discuss with your book, a lot of things that make it to the cutting room floor, as it were, and then just kind of get left behind. Very similar to the game. And I know I've spoken with Alexander a lot about like how we choose what goes into the game and how we make our process. But obviously, coming from like a writing background and like the distinction between written literature that's going to be around forever once it's written versus a game that we can actively continue to patch, I know it's a little bit more difficult and strenuous of a process for us. So what is that process like for you guys writing the book?
It's funny, I'll let Matt answer that in a minute, but we had a criticism about a lack of Eastern Europe, a totally fair one, in our book, and Matt and I were like, what we need is a DLC for the Bright Ages, so that we can just, because we have chapters we wanted to write on that, and it would be, you're right, that it's not, I mean, there could in theory be a later edition, but we can't release a DLC, and it's, I wish we could, I want that to happen. You go ahead, you take it, Matt, I've got to crush a rebellion.
Yeah, we'll have to wait till Bright Ages 2 Electric Boogaloo comes out.
Yes, I'm ready.
Yeah. So no, yeah, I mean the process of writing is, I mean it's lots of stages, and so one of the things that happened in our particular case, which I don't think is terribly uncommon in the process of writing a book, is that you propose kind of what you think you're going to write about. You give us kind of sample table of contents to the publisher, and ours was probably had like 7 or 8 more chapters than the book ended up having, in which we covered a whole bunch of other different topics. And we decided kind of as we actually started writing the book that they just didn't fit the ultimate story that we wanted to tell, the kind of overall arc. And so things that were really great, there's one which David talks about all the time, and I know he's never will forgive me about making him kind of cut this huge section on Matilda of Tuscany, this late 11th century duchess in northern Italy.
You mean Mama Matilda? Everybody's favorite starting character.
I mean, she's a very good start. She's a very good start.
Yeah, but also just like an immensely fascinating character in her own right, right?
Yeah.
And David wrote 2,000 great words about Matilda, and it just didn't fit.
Yeah.
And so we had to kind of like move it to the side and just leave it out.
There's that Eastern
We spoke
Slavic.
about Anna before. Anna, she wants to go home.
We're back to the next Anna event. She wants to go home. I'm not letting my mom leave.
Are you going to learn East Slavic this time?
Without the 240 stress?
Well, no, I don't think I get the stress this time.
Like I said, no stress this time. It's a stress-free learning.
Yeah, so I'll give it a shot. I'm also aware that I have one too many provinces, but I'm waiting to get married so that I can upgrade that. I mean, I don't maybe no one watching the stream cares, but I care that I'm playing efficiently.
Yeah, we're judging you. Like
I know,
we're sitting
I feel
here
judged.
judging you. So
I feel judged. I'm sure there's a whole back channel. Why would David do that?
The chat suggests
it's good to keep Anna around, though. I mean, like historically, like Anna was an incredibly important asset for Philip throughout his reign as well. Being married to Hugh of Valois and then cementing that alliance as well.
This is very bad.
What have you done?
This could be very bad.
Yeah.
It's not too bad. He doesn't have a lot of allies.
Who do they want to put on the throne?
They want to put Thibaut. No, Baldwin of Flint. No. Whose claim is it?
Robrecht.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Flanders. They want to put Flanders on the throne of France.
No.
Over my dead body, quite literally.
Well, yeah. Maybe, possibly, quite literally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Okay, I gotta slow it down for a minute here. All right, so.
But yes, chat suggests that you guys should just write your second book on Matilda, just the entire book.
I would love to write an entire book on Matilda.
I support this. I would buy it.
Yeah, I want to keep William. Getting a hook on William is very good.
I would recommend calling your allies.
Yeah,
I'm
seriously.
gonna call my allies.
Yeah.
They're just gonna die.
The game director just gave you a suggestion. Maybe you should listen to it.
I know. Probably I should. All right. So call my allies.
The director of the game is like, hey,
This
hi.
is why I married my sister off to the King of Denmark. Was to get at least someone that had a pretty good army. Yeah, so that's gonna. I'm gonna.
Is he invading the Isle of Man?
Yeah.
Denmark?
Who's invading?
Yeah.
Denmark
Denmark.
is invading Man.
Yeah.
But The up and down
But
scroll
why?
is not working totally.
What?
He is
But why?
in,
No, he's helping the
Okay.
Vikings.
Okay,
he's
okay,
helping
that
someone
makes-
else.
that
So
makes
he
a
must
lot
have
more
an
sense.
ally. He must have a marriage ally there.
I was
Seems
like,
totally
why?
reasonable.
What possible use would that be to him? The answer
So one
is
thing
no.
I have is I could, a lot of wars today as ever don't. I mean, in the Middle Ages as ever don't end in clear victories or defeats. And I do have kind of a white piece I could sign right away with my voluntary war here that I started. It's probably a bad idea, but I did.
Oh,
But I think
Quickly before, you need a commander for that army.
yeah, probably a good idea. Yep. Dead.
okay. Well, I'm gonna back up here. Let's see. What do I have? I've been so enjoying talking that I haven't really paid attention to my knights. Do I have a full complement of knights? I think I do now. Did not early. Yeah, I do now. Okay.
Oh man, do you remember that stream when Rod was still here, where he was waiting to get the 100 gold and you were stuck at 99?
Yeah.
We had a prisoner and they were worth 100 gold, and Rod, our former community leader, was in charge, and he was like, okay, we're gonna wait till 100. We're gonna wait till 100. We're gonna wait till 100, and they died. And he lost it all, and lost the war, and lost his title and everything. It was
That is not
beautiful in the worst
I did
way
not
possible.
do that well, but I have backup coming.
Ooh.
I thought I was much stronger than them, but
Defeat.
I'm definitely not. All right, we're gonna make this.
I think it took a bad battle. They were defending in forests, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna get a horse.
And a new
I got my allies coming. This is not great. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna end that war, so I don't have too many things going on.
I mean, you were really close. You could have had it.
I was really close. I know. But
So you're playing with horses now when you're in a
I'm
faction
playing with
war.
horses. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a 20-year-old king. Why would I care about the war when I could play with
War.
horses?
I've got ponies.
You were extremely doing Philip well, David. I have to say, because
I appreciate
Philip was actually very astute at navigating things, but always seemed to just kind of end things. He got kind of bored and lazy, and he just kind of ended things a little bit before he should have. So,
What would Philip have named his horse?
We're taking Roland's horse, the Chasson
All right.
du Roland, for sure. And we're going to keep playing along with chivalric stuff. We can talk a little about
Nice.
chivalry maybe later, but
In chat, you'd like to read more about this subject, but don't know where to start. Might I recommend a book? Like, I have a book
I really
to
appreciate
recommend
that, Troy.
you guys could read. I also happen to know the authors. They're pretty cool guys.
all right.
Hope one day you guys get to meet them. Oh, we have a question for the professor here. Other than the Alexiad, what kinds of sources do we have for the Norman conquest of Sicily and the Sicilo-Norman polity before the time of Friedrich II?
Take it, Matt.
yeah, so
Bang!
about the Norman conquest of Sicily and things like that. There's a fair amount. I mean, there's I can't remember. There's something called the Chronicle of Monte Cassino, which talks a little bit about it. And then there's the name is flying out of my head.
Hold on, we have advice.
But
We have some advice right quick. Yes, Alexander.
Don't forget commander on your army.
Yeah, assign commanders. Get your commanders. Anyway, go on. Sorry.
So that's interesting.
He died.
Yep, he was killed.
I don't normally miss the commanders, but apparently I'm having that issue today
So yes,
because I'm enjoying our chat so much. Normally I'm just playing rather than.
The great question about the sources of Norman Sicily.
sources. Yes, go on with the sources. We are excited. We are here.
Yeah, a fair number of them are available in translation. I mean, one of the things that the scholars of the 19th century were really good at was translating stuff out of Latin and making it available into English. The translations are not like super great for scholarly use nowadays because they made certain decisions and stuff like that. But that does mean that like on Project Gutenberg, like on free websites, some of that stuff is available nowadays, like freely available on the web because it's out of copyright.
Yep.
Google Books oftentimes has like free full versions scanned from, Stanford University Library or New York Public Library or something like that are there. Most of the sources that we have about the Norman invasion, both of Sicily and of southern Italy, and also the Peloponnese, kind of modern Greece, are from the Norman perspective. There are some Byzantine sources as well. The Alexiad, for example, like as the question meant, does indeed talk about it, but there's not a ton from that period directly. Part of the reason is because Alexius Comnenus, who was the ruler at the time, his dynasty kind of continued, but then there was a lot of tension about who took over from him, intrigue between his children, and so a lot of the sources. It was a fraught period to be writing history in which you lionized one period and not the other in Constantinople at the time, especially if it involved the Normans, who were not only fighting them in the Peloponnese but active in the Crusader states, which was another kind of problem for the Byzantines as well. So there is a fair amount of stuff. There's also, and this is something we don't talk about enough, and even as historians, is there's a lot of stuff that isn't text.
Yeah.
Like there's buildings.
Yeah.
There's buildings, and there's art, and there's stained glass, and there's architecture, and there's archaeological digs that have been done. So we know a fair amount of the period, which scholars kind of know about, but doesn't make its way into the popular imagination, unfortunately, as much as it probably should be.
You mean like a certain ceiling?
Come on, allies.
Gold and lapis lazuli and
yes,
sounds familiar.
yes.
There, they made it. They made it.
They
My
did it.
allies made it in time.
The King of Denmark.
The King of Denmark
Last
saved
minute.
France. It was very close. I thought it might work, but it was definitely a close one. Okay, that's nice. Go ahead. Oops. Too many windows.
All the windows. You need all the windows. That's how you play this game. With more windows comes more power.
It's not how I play the game. Well, that was a big victory for me. That was a big victory. I think we're going to be okay now. This is not a trivial revolution, though.
The Duke of Champagne, important guy.
Very
Important
important.
guy.
Yeah.
Very important.
Well, I don't know. While Matt was talking about Sicily, I was giving more independence to the Duke of Aquitaine because I really don't. I mean, I got to keep him happy, and he's running the independence faction. And if I can break that faction, really, in many ways, the goal in this century is to control northern France,
Right.
and then to use northern France as the pathway to southern France. But that's going to be for kids, assuming I have any.
Yeah.
It's just kid business. No big deal. Let them deal with it.
Yeah.
Oh man, so getting back to the question of like leaving things on the cutting room floor. There's one question that I'm really excited for, and like this is gonna kind of spring loaded. But now having read the book for both of us, is there any insights that you've gleaned from this? Anything you're interested in pursuing further, or?
Yes, there is, but I don't want to go too deep into it.
So that's a
Because
conversation for them and you to have that I'm really excited to see outside of this.
Yeah, possibly. There's some really good stuff in here. Just saying.
Yeah, you one or two post-it notes. I wish you guys could see a better view of this. There's at least 18, maybe 20 post-it notes in here, and that's what I like to see from a book is somebody that's gotten into it and read that much of it and has that many notes, and that really tells me that like you guys are on the same wavelength. There's a lot of similarity here, and not gonna toot my own horn too much, but sure I'm glad somebody got this stream together. Just saying.
That's Alexander. If you don't mind me asking, like that's something I've been curious, like as a historian, like and as a fan of the game for a long time, is like, one of the things that David and I really love about CK3 is how historically accurate it is, but also how kind of playful it is with that past. And I think that's something we try to do in the game. But like, can you talk a little bit about like how do you do like your research in order to that kind of informs how you structure your world?
Yeah, I can go some into it. So first and foremost, it's a game, of course. It's a game in a historical setting, so it has to be game first, fun factor, all of that. So that's the caveat. But still, we try to make it as historically plausible as we can. When there's contradictions in history, which is literally everywhere, we lean towards what is the most fun. That's a general approach we take. For example, if there's two people who ruled an area, one of them might be a semi-legendary character, maybe like a warrior princess or something, then we lean towards that, because it's simply more fun. So the process itself is, me as the game director, I'm more of a history fan than a history nut. and I enable my team, which is consisting of several history nuts, to essentially go wild. I ask them to do research, they read books, they order books, they go online and look for resources.
And guys, I have to tell you, it's like kids in a candy store. Seeing them put onto a project that they're passionate about is like literally watching kids in a candy store, and that's brilliant to be part of that team.
We have so many people in the company that have special interests in history, whatever it might be, medieval Persia or Spain or whatever have you. And then we try to allow these people to come to whatever place needs their knowledge, and maybe hold a little presentation or act as a resource to inspire the rest. Everyone is interested in history. Some people are more interested in certain areas than others, and usually we focus in on this is the area we are researching right now. And then we look at the books, we allow people to present, and if we know very little, we do pre-research, as in, what do we look for? Like, is there something fun to be gleaned here? Like, or is this perhaps a very pervasive medieval myth? Like, this is a topic we shouldn't even touch because it has no bearing on what actually occurred during the time. So even though it might be a fun mechanic, might be so steeped in misunderstanding or lies or or anything else that we just shouldn't touch it. And that's always the first step. Like, is this even relevant? Like, there's so many things that might be questionable that we catch very early on.
Yeah. This is really interesting because, I mean, you're basically you're describing academic research, right? It's just, and that's one of the things that David and I think are really excited about is working with people who are, like, you described yourself as like a history fan or a history nut, like, but that's basically what we are. I mean, we use different types of sources and we do different type of work sometimes, but I think that anybody who's interested in the European Middle Ages, and we should talk about how global CK3 is, which is absolutely amazing too. But this is you get interested in a topic, you read as much as you can, you try to figure out what's kind of going on, and from there you work out your analyses.
Yeah. I like to think of my team as educating me. It happens all the time, and then I enable this to happen as much as I can. What you just talked about, by the way, is one of my favorite things to talk about, and it's the how interconnected the medieval world actually was. And that's something that we get in this game. You get people traveling, you get wars across regions you would never have imagined, or marriages, or diplomatic plays. And it just feels so good. It feels real. It doesn't feel like practically any other medieval entertainment media, which usually focuses on one very specific region or a few, and it's set in stone how they interact. Like, this is the War of the Roses, it's specifically about this, or it's Western Europe, or just the Crusades or something, and it feels so black and white usually. So very few incidents, especially in the game, especially in history, are isolated. There's so very few things that we can say this is an isolated incident that did not influence or was not influenced by anyone else.